parenting has morphed over the years. It's changed, it's added, it's taken away, it's different, it's the same, all these kind of things. And it seems like when you become a new parent, everybody's got advice. Right? Or if you're expecting right now, everybody's giving you advice. If you want it or not. Everybody knows. And sometimes people that give you advice may not even have children. But they know everything about children for some odd reason because they were one. You know, it works out for them. I was a child. I know how I was treated. And so now I can tell you how to raise your child. Which is great. Totally understand that. You know, if you're giving biblical truth, it's not that you necessarily have to have children to exposit biblical truth to someone. I was giving marital advice when I was not married, but I was only espousing biblical truth, and I had to stay close to that because I had no experience. I had no understanding or knowledge myself. I had to just relay, like a reporter, this is what the Bible says about marriage, follow it. But now that I'm married, and I've been married for several years, I can kind of start throwing in, okay, this is what the Bible says, and this is what I've learned. And now that I've been a parent for 4 years now, 4+ years, I don't have a lot of parental experience, but I've got just a smidgen right now. And I've messed up a whole lot. My wife is like the superstar parent, and I'm the one like, let's wrestle, you know, that kind of thing. And that's not always the best thing to do with your kids, but it is a lot of fun. But everybody's got enough parental wisdom. Everybody tries to give or tries to espouse that. Here in Micah 7:6, the thing that we can see, that we can glean from this, is that we've got to watch attitudes. Watch attitudes. If somebody knows something about children or not, in-laws coming in with their old school or their school, redneck school, however school they come in, and yours is different, the first key thing that we see in Micah 7:6 has nothing to do with them. It has everything to do with us. Watch our attitudes. Watch attitudes. Now, we may jump from one presupposition to another. Oh, they're just trying to preach down my throat like they did when we got married. They hate me still. And you want to automatically become on the defensive. Watch the attitudes. All right, if you've got your phone out, I know our technology is blowing up as we speak right now. But if you've got your phone, you don't mind if it blows up real quick, pull your phone out, hit Facebook, Twitter real quick, and here's your Twitter verse of the day. And tag as many people in this room as possible saying, I'm worshiping God at this location, at Epiphany, and here's the verse. Make sure that you read this verse. Okay, Romans 12:14. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Romans 12:14. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Romans 12:14. One last time. Romans 12:14. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. And thank you everybody that tagged me last week. I was able to see a whole lot of folks that were tagging stuff last week. So feel free to tag me too. That's great. Romans 12:14. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Romans 12:14 is just one passage out of many passages that really hone in on not the situation, not everything that's been done to you, but your personal attitude. Your attitude in the situation. What we see here is that for the son treats father, daughter rises up against, daughter-in-law against. And so you see these people with these actions that literally begin with attitudes. Heart formations. It begins there first. Because if the son, the daughter, and the daughter-in-law have no contention, have no negative, have nothing in their heart that's wanting them to lash out, then they would not have lashed out. The Hebrew word here, and what we're expressing on this contempt and this rising up against, literally means to disgrace also. You see it in other Hebrew writings and also within the Old Testament. It means to disgrace. For the son disgraces his father. Well, how is that? Well, if you go along with the theme here in Micah 7, because they're rising up against. They're doing things against. We don't know exactly why specifically. And we know after after verse 6 and 7, we see Micah going into this, hey, Israel is in this place. And most commentators agree that then he tricks on this whole prophetical thing. We'll talk about that in just a second. But here, he's talking about, this is where a son is disgracing the elders, the elders. The sons treat the fathers like fools. Like they don't know what they're talking about. Which might be true. Might so be true about your in-law or about your boss or about your friend. They may have no clue on what they're talking about. And that's cool. They can have no clue. That's the life they can live. If they don't want to know, if they don't have education about it, they have no experience, but they're just talking and they just want to talk because some people just like listening to the sound of their voice. Knock yourself out. That's great. But the attitude here is allowing the son and the daughter-in-law to treat them negatively. It begins with the attitude. The attitude. As we are approaching fastly this wonderful occasion of Thanksgiving, and many people are wrestling around to figure out who's cooking what, who's coming from where, what time are we going there, and all of that. A lot of families, a lot of young families deal with a little bit of anxiety because they're going to have to deal with that individual that they normally don't deal with at all. It begins with forgiveness if something has happened. Now, forgiveness does not mean reconciliation, by the way. It doesn't mean that you have to, I forgive you, my heart's clean, I'm good. But you're not coming back to the house again because you're crazy. I've got a sign at the house, and it's all over New Orleans. And it says, be nice or leave. I love that. I absolutely love that. Just be nice or leave. But you know, some people do not know how to be nice. And if you're around them and you've got anxiety right now, and you're like, I loathe Thanksgiving, I loathe it, I get it. You know, you sound like an actor from, you know, a Shakespearean play or something at this point every Thanksgiving to your spouse. I don't want to do it, you know, and watch football. Because of the anxiety of your attitude. Of your attitude. The attitude here shows that there's some kind of action going towards somebody. The contempt that there is, if you have this bad attitude, if you have this sin in your heart that's leading to effectively treating somebody negatively, where you're rising up against and you're against this individual, then in a mother-in-law, father-in-law situation, it breaks a commandment. Exodus 20:12, Deuteronomy 5:16, where we're to honor father and mother. You're like, how do I honor that? You've not heard what they said. You're out your mind. Oh, you're a preacher. You got to say Bible things. But do you honor? Well, listen. On mother and father, we are called out to honor them. It doesn't mean that you are called out to obey them. You know that honor and obey are two different things? Now, as a child to your mom and dad, later on in Pauline letters, we're called to, as children, obey. As adults, we have our life to live. We have to do our thing. We are to honor. And if it's something that does not harm us, if it's something that doesn't go against the vision God has for our life, it is honorable to do it. Even if it takes us a little extra time, fine, sure, cool. That's a way to honor you. But if your father is Hitler, you know, if your mother is Hitler, you know, your father and mother-in-law are Hitler, and you're like, you know, I don't want to kill people, but they say, you prefer to kill people, you know, whatever Germans sound like. Then are you just supposed to kill them? No, of course not. That's ludicrous. But don't our minds always go to the extreme to prove our subtle points? So there's an extreme. No, we're not supposed to obey that which is sinful, but we're supposed to honor those that have went before us. Honor. I mean, this is coming right off of Veterans Day. Honor those that have went before us. Did you notice that in this passage, it didn't say son rises against father, son-in-law rises against father-in-law? Did anybody know that?
Yes, it is.
Now, you don't have to answer this question before you offended because it's like, well, hey, whoa, I'm a woman. What the heck? You know? Why did they have sons and fathers in this? this because it should not have. In that very beginning, yeah, it started out right. But then they started picking on me as a daughter, and I don't think it's right. Well, the context for which we are seeing this spoken of in Micah's day in Judaistic society and community, it was more involving of a daughter-in-law because when she got married to a man, she moved in with him and his family. So today's world, what happens? We get married, you get shipped off, you're in a house by yourself. We're so against community in America. We preach community, we preach communal things, we preach intimacy, but we have perverted all of that. Intimacy in a lot of things we've perverted. We talked about those kind of things in the past. We're not going to go there. We've got small ones here. But like with community, we've even perverted that. Get married, own a home, have some debt, get out of my life kind of attitude. Where in Judaistic community, they knew everything about community. Why? Because what they did was, when you got married, they knocked a hole in the wall in the back of the house. They built another room, and that was your place. That was your place. It wasn't that big, honestly. I've walked through them. They are small. They're like they're like 3 of these squares by 4 of these squares. It was enough room for you to lay down in. And they didn't really have many doors either. But when you had to walk out through the front door, you had to walk through your in-laws' room. And then maybe if they had a living room or a gathering room or a welcoming room, whatever they had, whatever they used it for, you had to walk through it too before you get out. So you had this room in the back. All right? But it wasn't like you had a door going out the back necessarily. Most of the rooms you had to go through. Why? Because it forced community. You were all one family. But today, we don't do that, do we? We have our own individual kingdoms. And most of us, we are seeing that time in 18 years from now. 15, 10 more years from now. That little guy or girl is going to be shipped off. And then we're going to have the house to ourselves all over again. Got plans for those baby rooms, don't we? Imagine if you actually hosted them back in. You know what's flipping society out today? Our generation.
It's true.
Because we're coming back to live with mom and dad. Oh, here, boy, shit, amen that right there. Can't go back to live with mom and dad. But they're flipping out because they're like, oh, you're lazy, oh, you're bummed, oh, why are you doing this? Ah. But in Judaistic community, it was asked, it was expected. That's how it was. Why? Because the family unit was stronger and it built that relationship. But yet we see it as an issue today. When some of us have actually had that experience. It's been a positive experience for a lot of us. Why? Because it's helped us. Why has it helped us? Because we're able to pull tight with family, pull resources, until we're able to get that foot on the ground. Was it a blessing? I bet 100% of you would say yes, unless you're a liar. And that's a different message after Christmas. We have to watch our attitudes. We also need to watch the context. We've already been talking a little bit about the context, but the context here is that we don't see historically the son's talking about because the daughter-in-law would be joined with that family. We see in Jeremiah spoke about this in Jeremiah 9 verses 4 through 5. He said, everyone take heed to his neighbor and do not trust any brother, for any brother will utterly supplant, and every neighbor will walk with slanderers. Everyone will deceive his neighbor and will not speak the truth. They have taught their tongue to speak lies. Where was Mr. Rogers in Jeremiah's time? That's all I got to ask. He got the little caboose teaching moral things to the neighbors, but Jeremiah's not speaking to them. He's speaking to the last part of verse 6 here, saying, a man's enemies are the men of his house. Why? Because you're living with mom and dad, in-laws. You're living with cousins and extensions. You're living with all this. And so you see this rise up more intimately because they're all in one home. Micah knew it was an issue. Because when one household was exploding, it didn't just explode there because the rooms are so small, they exploded all over the area. And it wasn't like anybody had room. Well, hey, come over here and live with me so you can get away from the folks. It wasn't like that. Look at the context. When you have conversation with in-laws, watch your attitude. Watch the context. Sometimes people just don't know how to communicate right. Amen, anybody? Sometimes people say some of the craziest things you've ever heard in your life, and they mean it well. What in the world? But they've got a good heart behind some of the craziest things. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, just wait till Thursday. You're going to know it. It's going to happen. Something's going to be said, and you're going to be like, oh, are you out your living mind? Watch your attitude. Watch your attitude. Watch the context. Would somebody be that arrogant enough to come into a context of a family, into this whole room, and say something as crazy as it sounded? Probably not. Probably not. Some people, yes, because some people are hateful and filled with the devil. That's probably not a lot of our situation. It's that there's a context there that was missed. You know, Jesus even quoted this passage. It was so popular, Jesus popped it out too on folks. All right, in Matthew 10, he did it 4 different times. Well, not 4 different times, in 4 different Gospels. Let's just clarify that. Matthew 10, 35 to 36, Luke 12, 53. He also said it a second time in Matthew 10, 21 and Mark 13, 12. In Matthew 10, 35 to 36, this is what Jesus said. He said, "For I, Jesus Christ, your Lord and Savior, came to set a man against his father, and a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. And a man's enemies will be the members of his household." Wow. Really? Jesus said that he is going to be the reason that splits your family. Wow. Have you ever heard like hard sayings from Jesus before? Have you ever read stuff about Jesus like, what in the world? What does that mean? There has to be some kind of community reason for this. There has to be some kind of context for which he's quoting this, a reason why he's saying this. He's going to be the reason that a man goes against his father, daughter against mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. Not only, just 2 reminders come up from this, honestly, just to be brief about it. Two reminders. One thing, sometimes your strife, sometimes negativity with an in-law or running relationship or somebody else, a marital extension, may not be over something negative. You know? If they come, walk into your house, smoking reefer, something like that, okay, that's negative. Alright? We can all agree it's not legal in Tennessee yet, and even if it becomes, we're still probably not good with it. Okay? Not exactly. No, not really. Not us. But if they come in and they say something, and they feel that it's positive, they feel that it's encouraging, we're like, you're crazy. You know, and it's not the way that we do our thing. Sometimes splits can occur on things that are not necessarily negative. And being the Christian follower, Christian believer, we have to be the person that doesn't take offense to it. Just let people be who they are. Love them. Be an extension of Christ. The second thing that we can also see is although Jesus may be your priority, Jesus may not be the priority for your in-laws. Now, if you have Jesus as a priority for your in-laws, that's great. One of the most religious, going to church, strong men in my wife's family is her father. He is dedicated to his church, serving his community, and I've always appreciated that. I've always loved that. He's a man that makes sure we pray over every meal. He's a man that makes sure that the Bible story is understood. He loves his family. He's very, very staunch about that. I love that aspect about him. And my wife's family, they go to church as well. My father-in-law is very, very strong about that. He's a strong kind of guy anyway. And so, sometimes we may run into in-laws that aren't really sold out about Jesus like we are. And so it may cause a split because we want to do kind of a Christian thing. Hey, I feel it's Christian to give a tithe. And although we may still be buying ramen noodles, or we may be going to Aldi's because, well, we save a lot of money there, and I'm not sure why I would ever stop. Honestly, by the way, well, that's where we shop and stuff. I just bought ramen noodles 2 days ago. Some people that are learning about Jesus saying, look, that 10% that you give the church, you can feed your family with name brand things, like Twinkies. Oh. Yeah, right? They're going out. They're going out. I mean, there's no other time in history that Twinkies have hit $100 per pack on eBay. Yes, don't you wish you bought Twinkies 2 weeks ago? Could have funded a building program with that. Oh, we missed it. How'd you build your building? Twinkies! Little Debbie cakes and everything. Really? They're in the building? Well, let me explain. So, we missed it. Just missed it. But there are times that your family-in-law may not necessarily see what you do for Christ as necessary for your family. Are you ready to be persecuted for Christ? Because that's what Christ is saying. There are going to be times that I set you apart. That you're going to look different and that your family's not going to understand. Are you ready for that? Because I've not come to kind of build that community with sinfulness. I have come to set us apart. I have come to give you salvation. I have come to give you this gift. I have come for that. People are going to hate it because they hate me now. Sometimes you're going to be split because of your relationship with Jesus. But what better situation for you and I, right? To have that awesome opportunity to know that they are not with Christ. They are not of Christ. They're going to say things that are not Christian at all. Not even any try to saying things Christian. And you know that you're a pastor, you're a children's leader, you lead worship, and they know that, but yet they're not even going to cater their words to you. What an awesome opportunity that God gives us called Thanksgiving. That we're able to invite them to the house, feed them, bless them, and just be the light that Jesus Christ was for us. Watch the context. Watch the context in which people say things. Watch our attitudes, number one. Watch our context, number two. And finally, what we see in this passage is that we also ought to be people that watch God at work. So we watch our personal attitudes. That's good. That's great. We need to watch the context in which people work, but we also need to watch God working, because what would we be if we only watched us in the context? We would be secular humanists. We would not be Christ followers. So by saying the phrase, watch God at work, actually literally saying, expect God to work. Expect it. You may loathe the idea that you're going to be hanging out with extensions. Instead of loathe, be expectant that God is going to do something awesome. Technology is not working here at Epiphany real well right now. Okay? It's not working. Look at there. It's working. It's working. I'm not going to do a video, not going to do anything, but it's up on half the screen. Not sure how that cut out, but it's there. Technology sometimes reminds us, and here at Epiphany there's a lot of different things that come up where things are difficult. And every time something happens that's difficult, it always reminds me, expect God to work. Because the enemy may be at work, and you're like, the enemy, really, in your technology, didn't get your words up? Yeah, sure. Something as little as that, because the devil's not really that powerful. He's got to get in where he can, right? And if he's a part of Vizio, Devil TV, then you got to be careful. Because obviously, he's not attacking that one, Vizio. So, watch God at work. Expect Him to work when things are going difficult. Let me tell you just real quick what's going through your pastor's mind, going through my head when all this is not happening. The praise team are singing songs. You're like, we don't know these songs. The last two songs are like, I know these. I can sing. What I'm thinking in my head is that there's something that's going to happen in our first service. And I don't know what it is. Not that something crazy is about to pop out as I have all of your attention right now. So you're all like, zing. But I believe possibly that God's working on somebody's heart right now. I'm expecting to see that. Maybe you'll let me know. Maybe in just a minute when we do the invitation kind of thing, you come and pray with me and let me know that kind of thing. Maybe you don't. But it still doesn't allow me not to expect God to work. When things aren't going the way that we have planned, when things that seem to be a benefit go awry, when your whole church building is stolen, it just seems like God at that moment, we should flip that trigger on and say, expect. Watch God work. Expect. Because something may be coming in. Micah, in this passage, is equating the disintegration of society by being caused by the disintegration of the family. When you have daughters, sons go against family, when you have family and your enemies are within your family, you really see at the core the breakdown of society. And what's happening here in Micah's day is he's like, be careful. Because not only is this breaking down society, this is going to break down us as the children of Israel. The individual family unit, if you break down, it will break down this community we call the children of Israel. And that's where Micah goes into verse 7 through 9. Let me read that for us. But as for me, I will watch expectantly for the Lord. He said all this negative, but he's going to be expectant. I will wait for the Lord, for the God of my salvation. My God will hear me. Do not rejoice over me, O my enemy. Though I fall, I will rise. Though I dwell in darkness, the Lord is light on me. I will bear the indignation of the Lord, because I have sinned against him, until he pleads my case and executes justice for me. He will bring me out to the light, and I will see his righteousness. Do you know what the problem is with this passage? With the Thanksgiving thing, with this treachery, with this hard attitude that's turning into action, and you're going and you're rising up against, and the core problem is sin. And it's not theirs, it's ours. And so, before we hit this marital extension moment, this in-law moment, we have to be people that check our attitudes. Watch that context. Be expectant for God to move. You're like, is God going to move every Thanksgiving? Because it's going to help out a lot. Yeah. When you are being the Christ follower that you are called to be, expect him to move. You may not see it like in just a few moments. We may not see, but we don't know what's happening here or here. There's a family member of mine, I'm not going to tell you which side, that hasn't really ever followed the Lord. But I have, throughout many years, the individual knows what I do and respects it, but never really connected with me about it. But after several years of me being in the ministry, me being around this person now allows me to pray in their presence. Y'all are like, dude, you should be praying. Well, that's pretty big, because allowing means that this person bows their head and doesn't say anything but respectfully prays with me. It's taken a long time, many Thanksgivings, many holidays, many summers together. But I have expected God to move, and God is showing the way that he is moving. In Lamentations 3:25-26, God would intervene to deliver his people when the time is right, through appropriate judicial, military, and spiritual intervention. God is the rescuer. There's not a time that you and I are in a situation that's too much that we can bear. There's not ever a time, because it's always the time. There's always times where we're placed in a situation where we're like, I'm going to pull their hair out. But at that moment, watch the attitude, watch the context, and expect God to move, because it's at that one breaking moment, that one moment, that I believe the devil's rushing in with his army one last time to push you over the edge, to sever a relationship, fill your heart full of hate and rage. And God is waiting to rescue you.